Welcome back. Whether it's a partner, family member, friend, or colleague navigating a relationship with a narcissistic individual, it can be incredibly challenging and emotionally draining. So earlier on, we discussed what is narcissism, and we're joined once again by clinical psychologist Janine Smith, who's here to share strategies to better cope with living with a narcissist. What are some of the behaviors that can come up when you're living with someone that can impact a relationship?
Okay, so, one of the more common instances happens to be gaslighting. And that's really, really damaging to a relationship. And also constant belittling, because they need you to feel less than for them to feel more than.
And that's put other people down to feel better about ourselves.
So there's a constant devaluation. And they don't, with close relationships, you're bound to show up some limitations or flaws that you may be blinded to, right?
Yes.
And that's normal through the process of a relationship. So normally we're able to integrate those. But with somebody with narcissistic personality disorder, they're hypersensitive to any criticism in whatever form.
Can you give us an example of a gaslighting situation in a whether it's a relationship or working environment?
So the interesting thing is, when an argument starts and you raise something, they will, at the end of it, they will convince you that you are at fault. Okay. And that's what gaslighting is all about. So you end up, sitting there and actually being confused, doubting yourself, second-guessing everything. Okay. And remember, they're really charismatic, really confident, really dominant personalities, so that they can kind of steamroll over people quite effortlessly.
Okay.
And that is often a problem for family members to deal with, especially, like I say, when somebody's in an authority position.
Yes.
So like a parent and a child, there's an authority differential there, or supervisor and somebody beneath them.
Yes.
So it does create a lot of difficulties within relationships over time, especially because when people come to see me, they've endured thousands of different manipulation strategies that they've needed to overcome or navigate their way through. They normally come to me with a low self-worth, low self-esteem. Their sense of what to accept as treatment in a relationship is really warped.
Okay.
So they first need to learn that is not acceptable.
Yeah.
They first need to understand that treatment, nobody should actually have to endure that. So that is the first kind of intervention, is to actually
seeking assistance.
And to actually give them an objective perspective of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable.
Okay. And what do you do when you love, someone that is a narcissist? How do we implement boundaries? How do we, especially when we inherit people that we can't really walk away from? And also when you are empathic and you want to make a relationship work, or you want to make a working relationship work, how do we do that?
Look, there are a lot of different techniques that you can employ, but first you need to be clear yourself about what you are willing to accept. You'll need to have some kind of introspection yourself. So you have to actually work on yourself and your own self-esteem. And then once you realize what's not acceptable, you then need to set clear boundaries and communicate that. But that's normally the easiest part. To set boundaries is easy. To maintain them is the problem. So to really find support, seek support, other family members, friends, or therapy often gives you that objective space to just bounce thoughts and gain perspective.
Yes.
Because you really need that objectivity when you are in a close relationship with, and as you said, you can't always avoid it because it's a family member or a spouse. But setting clear boundaries and maintaining it is one of the most important things. There's another technique that I often transfer onto a skill that I transfer onto my patients, and that is called the grey rock technique.
Grey rock technique.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
Where you just literally are neutral in your responses. You don't react emotionally to any provocation. Because remember, if you're going to react, you're going to be colluding with the pathology.
Yes.
You're going to be colluding with whatever they are needing, whether it's validation, affirmation, or wanting, or admiration.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, and that's a big one, right? Not to be able to react. Because
they are fueled by that.
Yes.
Remember.
So you need to know what fuels them, and then you need to diffuse that.
That's the word, diffuse it. Because when you actually are neutral in your response, it's actually diffusing. They want you to react in a way that will feed into their ego. So remember, they don't have an observing ego, so they're just getting what they want.
Yeah.
But when you kind of employ this grey rock technique, they struggle with that.
Yes.
But you'll also have to maintain that response.
Yes.
And then
I think the grey rock technique is a good technique for all of us to have, period, in our lives.
True story.
Doesn't matter, you know, who you're dealing with or who you're not dealing with, like, learn to respond and not to react. Finally, I'd love to ask you, Janine, how do you gently, sensitively, and with love and compassion try and get your person that may be displaying these behavior traits to therapy?
Okay, historically, this is not easy, hey? This is very, very challenging. But it does help when you can highlight the benefits of therapy. You'll be able to be helped to manage your stress, for example, if you try and show them how they will benefit from it.
Yeah.
Remember, there's nothing wrong with them, hey?
Yeah.
So you need to actually show how they will benefit from therapy.
Yes.
And then when you have a problem, to avoid blaming, use I statements like, you know, when you say that, I feel.
Okay.
When you do that, I feel.
Okay.
And that they feel less threatened, and they'll be less defensive if you employ that technique as well.
So you make it about the way you're feeling.
Yes.
And I guess something positive could be as well, saying something like, let us go for therapy.
That's a very important point, because if you show your support, like you'll accompany them. You may not sit in the session, but you're happy to accompany them so that they're not seen as the problem. That will be that. Remember, beneath, you see all of those symptoms like lack of empathy, entitlement, grandiosity. It's a manifestation of a deep-rooted vulnerability and insecurity. So when you highlight that, that's when they're going to become extremely defensive. So you need to kind of find another way, another pathway into getting them to go for help.
And also to be empathic and compassionate when it comes to that.
But not at the expense
of yourself, for sure.
Of your self-care.
Like you said, start with yourself, get healthy first, so that you can know what is being functional or dysfunctional in your relationship. Janine, it's always a delight to have you in studio. I wish we could have you here more often. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Navigating the complexities of narcissistic relationships can be incredibly challenging, as we've just heard, but I hope that this conversation has provided you with practical strategies and valuable perspectives that can help you mitigate these difficulties.